All right. Greetings, friends. My name is Matios. I use he, him pronouns with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. And welcome to our monthly Gender and Sexuality working group meeting. And this is a space where we discuss the intersection between policing, surveillance, and obviously gender and sexuality. And this is one of our weekly Tuesday meetings that takes place on the first Tuesday of the month. Just a quick overview of the rest of the meetings. On the second Tuesday of the month, we focus on the war on youth, the surveillance of youth specifically. Third Tuesday is our general meeting, which is in person at LA Can. And our fourth Tuesday focuses on data-driven policing, which also takes place at LA Can. And this is a space where we're revitalizing in some ways, right? It's a fight that has needed some capacity, and so we're really excited today to talk about some folks that have plugged in to kind of bolster this fight and talk about some of the work we're looking to get done in the upcoming months. But before we do any of that, why don't we go around and introduce ourselves, and let's let Ryan in. And maybe we can say our names, our pronouns, our organizational affiliations, if any. And let's see, does anyone have a good check-in question? Is anyone dying to provide a check-in question that they really love? Because I have one, but it's not as fun. All right, we'll do mine, which is um the name of your first pet. If you ever had a pet, what would you name your pet? All right. Yeah, I'm recycling it. That's why Haman's shaking his head. Um, and I'll go first. My first pet was a parakeet named Angel, and we miss Angel very much. And to I'll pass it to Hamid.
I knew you were going to do that. Hi, my name is Hamid, he, him, with Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. And I've never had a pet. It was also, well, my daughter had a dog, so I guess, and the dog's name was Bailey. So I will pass it on to Salim.
Hi everyone, my name is Salim, and I'm an intern with LA Can, and I'm also a junior at Occidental, and my sister had a dog named Buna. Yeah. I'll pass it to Joanna.
Hi everyone. I'm Joanna, pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a PhD student at UC Berkeley, and my first pet was a turtle, and I named her Vanessa. Why, I'm not sure, but it's a pretty strong name for a turtle. But I'll pass it on to Jamie.
Hey, Jamie, she, her. I work with Justice LA and help out with LAPC fields stuff as well. And my first pet was a hamster who was called Paul McCartney, named after the Paul McCartney you're thinking of, not a different Paul McCartney. I'll pass to Farzana.
And you know what? We're gonna skip Farzana, and I'll go ahead and pass for you to Raqueline. Raqueline.
Well, thank you. My name is Rocaline. I'm she, her, they, them. My first pet was this horse named Patches, and she was so mean. She would buck me off all the time and then chase after me. But it was fun. And I'll go ahead and I'll let Matios pick.
Oh yeah, okay. I'll go over to okay, Ryan's riding their bike, I think they said. But I'm gonna uplift Ryan. He, him pronouns. His first pet was Barbara the goldfish. Also a very good name for a goldfish. Um, let's pass it to Laura.
Hi, Laura, she, her pronouns. My first pet was a frog named Sticky. Oh, I'll pass it to Naoko.
Um, Hi, I'm Naoko, she, they. My first pet. My brother had like a hamster with some generic name. Um, I'll pass it to. Sorry, who hasn't gone yet?
Yeah, Chella hasn't gone. I don't believe Jordan's gone yet.
Okay, I'll pop into Chella.
I realized that I wasn't even muted. Sorry about that, y'all. I'm better at this than that. I'm Chella. I'm part of Stop LAPD Spying. My pronouns are she and they, and never had a pet. I don't desire pets. But real talk. And who hasn't gone?
I haven't gone.
Okay,
Can y'all
Jordan.
hear me all right?
Yep.
Hey, y'all, I'm Jordan. I use she, they pronouns. I'm sorry that I cannot have my camera on. I'm trying to drive home. And I am the new oral historian at Million Dollar Hoods. Um, and I forgot the question.
Oh, yeah, the question is your first pet's name or if you've never had a pet.
Right. Right. My first pet's name was Ashley. It was my first dog, and I named her after a girl um in my preschool because my name is often gendered as masculine. I was really wanting to be a girly girl when I was little, and so I just wanted, yeah, to name her after a girl that I went to preschool with. Yeah. Thanks, y'all.
That's great. So many people names in here, which says something about the crowd. I don't know what, but definitely says something. Thanks so much, everybody, for checking in, and thanks so much for plugging into this meeting again. So yeah, just to kind of revisit our goal for today, it's kind of to revisit the gender and sexuality fight, and we have a lot of stuff we want to cover, and we need a lot of support and capacity. So one of the objectives here is kind of lay out um what we're doing within this working group and see if there's anything else we need to be doing. So this is really an opportunity for us to hear from community members, who were impacted by policing surveillance, who are clued in to that intersection, more than anybody, to kind of assess what should be our priority, right? When addressing this fight. And maybe there are facets and manifestations of the policing of gender and sexuality that we haven't thought about, that we haven't uplifted. And so to put that on the docket as well. But before we do that, and Hamid, I'm wondering if you can help me out with this. Maybe we can give a little bit of background on how the GNS fight started, how this came about. Just a little background on this working group specifically. And I also want to honor and uplift Chella in the room as well, who's been, super vital part of this fight and here since its inception. But yeah, I'll pass it over to you.
Absolutely. Chella, do you want to do that little background, or do you want me to do that?
I can.
Please.
Can everybody hear me clearly? I'm on a different
Yes.
phone. Okay, good. So whatever I don't put in, you can fill in, Baba. Yeah. So gender and sexuality started as a way to start thinking around policing, specifically around gender and sexuality. So women, embodied, and or queer and trans and intersex folks. At first, we were we were looking at ways to start talking about it within ourselves, battling the misogyny and patriarchy within the space, which we started to do. And then COVID happened. And so like it transitioned into looking at not just the way that it impacts us on the street in our daily lives and here and specifically in the meeting space, but how the state uses gender and sexuality to arrest folks, how Black women are some of the Black women are some of the people that are left out of the conversation. And the struggle of intersectionality, we bring up race a lot, but then we started realizing, hey, Black women, especially in Skid Row, Black women are some of the highest police in Skid Row, and then looking at the U.S., and as well as trans and queer folks, and seeing all the legislation and things that are happening with our comrades in the U.S. and with the and outside of the U.S. So we started doing things around like gendered violence and homelessness in Skid Row, specifically, as folks know, Stop LAPD Spying is a part of LA Can. So we started doing things around working with DWC, as well as working with SWAP, Sex Workers Outreach Project LA, which I'm also part of. And also just looking at the ways that like at first George Floyd happened, right? And George Floyd was just like the beginning of like the end, right? Especially during COVID. People would say George Floyd's name, but not remember Tony McDade or any of the Black trans women. And so we started partnering up with different groups and different people, especially me and my band, to take over spaces and to reclaim and to say, no, we need to do things about this. So it's a way of looking at the policing through the eyes of gender and sexuality. We also this year partnered with DWAC, which is Downtown Women's Action Coalition in LA Can, to release a report, which I'm sure Baba can fill y'all in a little. I mean, Hamid, sorry, Hamid can fill you in a little bit more on. But yeah, that's how it started. That's how it's going. Just to be honest about my my capacity lately, I have some health issues going on, so I have been stepping back from leadership roles. And so yeah, but I still want to be a part of supporting this. Yeah, Ahmed, you can fill in what I didn't say and correct what I didn't get right.
No, you got everything right, Chella. I think the only additional thing was that this was the intentionality behind this also was that the origins of Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, or how the work started, were really centered around race and poverty. So that had been our primary focus, which was also guided by that how historically data collection and surveillance and intelligence gathering is used and is weaponized to criminalize race and poverty as well on so many different levels. So that happened for the first 5 or 6 years. And the next stage was that we started looking at in late 2015, early 2016, about the intersection of the police state and the criminalization of youth, that how surveillance and data collection is being weaponized to particularly target youth. And it also was the idea that it helps us in getting a more nuanced understanding that how the national security police state operates. And then by late 2018, 2019, actually 2018 is when we started having conversations, and exactly what Chella was saying, that both looking internally and then looking outside, that how the national security police state impacts gender and sexuality. So these were just some of the things that led to it. So maybe I'll stop there and see, Matios, if folks have any questions. Otherwise, I can just we can just talk about some of the stuff that is going on as well. I just kind of typed out some of the fights around that.
Thanks so much for doing that, Hamid. Yeah, let's open it up for folks if you have any questions. And we can also
Yes.
share. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna say, make a quick comment. I think you know, just the Chella's role and Chella's leadership. You know, you can't say enough about that. I mean, obviously, and you know, just going back to, back to 2013, 2012, 2013. You know, just about the leadership that Chella has played, both in the coalition and in the Skid Row community, and really kind of just um, guide us in kind of building our understanding. And we're still learning as we go along about the how nuanced this assault and state violence is. So I really, really want to just name that and really just can't say enough and appreciate Chella for Chella's leadership in that. And also want to name Jamie, who was one of the earliest ones who started this group, and then also Mariela and several other people who've been such a key part of this. I'll stop there. Sorry, Matthias, you were saying something.
No, I was just gonna say maybe folks will have questions after we kind of talk a little bit more about the type of work we have been doing and that we're trying to continue and grow. And I also just want to shout out Kevin joining. What's up, Kevin? Good to see you here. Hopefully fewer technical difficulties than the last time you were on. But yeah, so just to kind of touch on some of these facets of the gender and sexuality fight that Hamid has listed here. And I guess we don't necessarily have to go in order, just because, you know, obviously, you know, women, Black trans femmes especially, are targeted by the LAPD, have always been targeted by policing and receive a brunt of that violence. And, you know, a lot of our focus has been around Skid Row community members, in collaboration with DWAC, Downtown Women's Action Coalition. It's with them that we released a report on DCFS, our second report on DCFS, that was principally authored by Victoria Copeland, who's a really rad academic. I want to shout her out. But also, you know, following the Super Bowl last year, which was February of 2022, if I remember correctly, which was in LA, an area of focus that we kind of zeroed in on was the targeting of sex workers by LAPD. And this is something, you know, that historically we've seen in response to these kind of large scale global events, right? And we know LA is slated for a lot of those in the upcoming years, right? We've got the World Cup in 2026, we've got the Olympics in 2028, and you know, it's not unheard of for the LAPD to really zero in and target sex workers ahead of these events. In fact, in 1984, ahead of the 1984 Olympics, the LAPD also targeted sex workers around that time and had even commemorative pins that they wore, right, for their Vice Squad. So this glorification of violence against women is something we've seen the LAPD embody time and time again, even outside of these like codified open, you know, targeting sex worker practices. There's a history of domestic violence and sexual abuse against women. Also just, you know, violence within their ranks, right, among officers. So one way we kind of saw that pop up following the Super Bowl was this narrative of sex trafficking to kind of fuel this targeting of sex workers. So one of the public records requests we put in was for arrest data to figure out, you know, who exactly was being targeted for these arrests of sex workers following the Super Bowl. So we got a ton of records, and I want to shout out the folks in the gender and sexuality team, but also our legal intern last year, Taylor Fox, who put in She put in an incredible amount of work. She's up in Berkeley right now, in the law school over there, and putting a lot of work into organizing these records, along with Tiff Guerra, who's our research coordinator. And so that's one aspect of this work that we want to grow and expand, is organizing that arrest data more. I believe it's about 1,400 arrests, so it's huge. There's a lot of information about LA community members, and trying to figure out what story we can tell, right? And taking that to the community that's being targeted and being impacted. So that's just one aspect of that. Hamid, I don't know if you want to share any more about that.
No, and then the one thing that really was pretty obvious was that the overwhelming majority were Black women, and also other non-white women as well. Also the ages, the way it was stated, it was much younger women as well. So it was clearly an assault on gender and poverty, and under the guise of, and it is a much bigger agenda that they have been unleashing. So yeah, I mean, that's all I would add to that. And we kind of just did some sort of an analysis, and we worked with the Sex Workers Outreach Project, SWAP, in LA about that, and also with US Pros, which is a US prostitutes collective. We've also worked with previously other sex workers group like Hacking and Hustling, for whom we did a whole training as well, using our algorithmic ecology model in their fight against the federal legislation, which was criminalizing payment to sex workers through credit cards and various other things. And there was a lot of other forms of criminalization that was going on, SESTA, FASTA. So that was also going on as well. So these are just, and then a little bit of work with the Sidewalk Project, which is out of Skid Row as well on that.
Great. And I just want to open it up to questions if folks have any about that specifically. And again, I want to encourage folks to, like, if there's a facet of that you're curious about, like a piece of information that we should maybe prioritize looking for, please do uplift that. That's what we're here for. Salem, see you with your hand up.
Yeah. Sorry, I just didn't want to interrupt you. But I was wondering what the algorithmic model is, and if you guys could talk a little bit more about that. I don't know if I got that right, but that's what I typed.
The algorithmic ecology model is exactly that what is the ecology with the broader landscape that the algorithm operates in? Who are the interested parties? What is behind that? It's an awesome organizing tool to understand and dig deeper as to how many different multiple targets are there. So this whole came out of our work around predictive policing, where typically when you talk about policing and predictive policing, the mainstream understanding is that it's a feedback loop, that you put racist data in and racist outputs are going to come out. But that's a very oversimplification of the issue, because it started off, and I'm not going to go through the whole background, because there was a murder of a Cameroonian immigrant who was unhoused, Charlie Africa, in Skid Row on March 2nd, 2015. And it became a big issue as well. This is when 5 cops literally pulled him out of the tent and shot and killed him 6 times. So what we wanted to do was to see that whether Charlie Africa's tent was located within a hotspot, predictive policing hotspot. So we filed for public records, and by the time we got those public records, it took quite a bit of time. So we filed for a 6-month sample in 2015 and a 6-month sample in 2018. So when we started mapping those out through this geospatial mapping and other types of mapping as well, to our sort of bit of a surprise, what we realized was that, that somehow Skid Row was was really not showing a whole lot of, and hardly any predictive policing hotspots. So now that was kind of a surprise for us, because Skid Row, as we all know it, is one of the most policed area anywhere in the world. I mean, per capita, if we were to think about it. So what we did was, so I'm just going to show you exactly what it looked like. So this is the so here we are, Gladys and Sixth. This is where LA Can is, and Charlie Africa was murdered right here on San Pedro. Like if you follow this thing, just right about here, Charlie Africa was murdered. So this is all Skid Row. So when we started, just posting these hotspots, we were like, wait, I mean, there are hardly any hotspots in Skid Row. What's going on? That's when we started digging deeper. We're like, okay, so this is like almost like a digital Jim Crow. That here you have the density of hotspots are all in this new downtown, where the financial district, all the penthouse apartments, all like, these foo-foo places like Pussy and Pooch and high-end restaurants and this shit and that shit, right? So this was, so what the way this works is that this, then every 12 hours, when the shift is going on, they look at these things, so they would be then assigned a patrol duty in these areas. So this is kind of just claimed as a deterrent to crime, as preventive policing, right? So now, so that started making sense that, okay, so this is for the protection of downtown and other neighborhoods, the warehouse district, the art district, little Tokyo and all of that. So so there's always going to be police over here. Anybody from Skid Row wants to go towards the new downtown, the undesirables, they would be slammed against the wall and kind of made their lives miserable and basically discouraged to go into the new downtown. Right. So just keeping all the so that's when we started looking at this thing and we're like, okay, we need to understand that what's going on over here. And then we started mapping it out as to, just what is this algorithmic ecology. Matios, I don't know if you can pull up the Medium article on automating on the algorithmic ecology. If you want to post it here. So that's when we started looking at like, okay, let's take out the algorithm for a second, or not for a second, just decenter it, and let's see who all is around it. So that's when we started posting, just layer by layer, that, okay, so this was created by a bunch of academics. So now they are complicit in this thing. The original funding came from Department of Defense for them to research and do that thing. So the federal government is deeply complicit in this thing, because then the Department of Justice provided grants. Their Bureau of Justice Assistance provided grants for startup predictive policing programs. So they are deeply complicit. Then we started looking at like how new downtowns, so real estate developers are deeply complicit in this thing. And then we started looking at the role of the city government, that how a year before predictive policing was dismantled, Garcetti in his State of the City address said that predictive policing is the best thing that has ever happened. So the city government, the Board of Police Commissioners is deeply complicit. Nonprofits were deeply complicit. So in essence, it helped us understand the ecology that surrounds it. And that's when then, we'd already had this whole fight against the academy. So academic complicity is a working group. We've been kind of just, going after the city and other nonprofits as well, and the police commission. So it kind of helps you understand the ecology, and then, just have more targeted fights as well.
Just to chime in, so specifically for gender and sexuality, this is our report on DCFS, made in collaboration with DWAC, identifies how these kinds of algorithms are used for risk assessment within DCFS to target families, right? So the risk stratification model is one. So even outside PredPol, which was used by the LAPD on a whole, we see it specifically targeting Black mothers, Black families in DCFS. And I'll drop that report in the chat too.
Thank you.
One quick thing I will add to, and thank you, Matthias, for raising that how this applies to gender and sexuality and violence against women, especially institutional violence against women, because that's how, in a sense, risk assessment scoring is happening as well, the tools that they use, and it's almost predictive analytics as well. So when we look at the broader ecology, just, and that's where the stalker state and some of these things come up, that how information is being received from so many different levels, and how that sort of the algorithm then uses and kind of just builds it responses and almost a guide based upon this thing, where the whole ecology is like, even we talk about in the report as well, that how when somebody walks in and they're being interviewed, let's say at the Department of Children and Family Services, the one thing they would immediately note is aggressive. Well, not thinking about, like, that a person had to deal with childcare, a person had to deal with transportation, a person had to deal with feeding children, a person had to deal with frustrations, a person had to deal with the front office environment, a person had to sit and wait, and children are hungry. So, but that becomes a marker as well. So this is when we think about the ecology, it almost helps in kind of just helping us map out and understand that the complete pseudoscience that is being used behind it, and it's complete, pardon my language, just complete fuckery that's going on to violently oppress, particularly Black and brown folks.
Yeah, any questions about any of that?
Good question. I'm just curious about, like, for you mentioned like the REST data, you mentioned like the data spot map. I'm just curious about what data sources you used. Like, how did you get that data?
Yeah, so we get this information, well, with the arrest records that came directly from LAPD. So, and most of our information, if not all of it in its entirety, usually comes from public records requests that we've submitted through the CIPRA, California Public Records Act. And then we just take that information, analyze it collectively within a work group like this one, and like kind of come to a conclusion or analysis that we publish. So that's where that comes from.
Okay, cool, thank you. So does that mean like the predictive policing map that sort of represents like, I guess like a slice or a snapshot in time of like what those hotspots were? Like, we don't know whether those are sort of like currently still the case. Is that true?
Yeah, so just an interesting point to that end, there were kind of two predictive policing programs that were part of LAPD's first generation of predictive policing, which were Laser and Predpol. What we saw for those hotspots were Predpol, and Predpol actually ended in April of 2020. April of 2020, right. And so since then, it ended, but they've actually just rebranded a new program called Data Informed Community Focused Policing, DICFP. And in the past, where they had Predpol hotspots or they had laser zones or anchor points, they've now brought back this kind of new location-based policing or problem. It's actually called a problem-oriented policing method called SARA, which stands for Scanning, Analysis, Response, and Assessment. It was developed in the 80s, but the LAPD is rolling it out as like this new thing. And in that program, they identify what they're now calling neighborhood engagement areas, NEAs. And even in some facets of SARA, they even use the language of anchor points still, which was affiliated with laser. I say all that to say, these, like, the language of what these location or crime triggers has kind of been rebranded, but we are seeing a lot of overlap between I can't remember any Predpol hotspots that overlapped onto the new programs, but for example, Fifth and San Pedro was an anchor point under the laser program, which was discontinued in 2019. It's also a SARA site, right? With this new program, they still identify the same intersection. So we're seeing some of these locations roll over with new predictive policing programs. Hamid, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that's what it is. I just wanted to kind of just bring it back to the targeting of sex workers and how. So we've also so a bulk of these arrests and were in the Figueroa corridor, around the Super Bowl and all. So and then so we had also filed for public records to see if there were Sarah operations going on over there too, to identify, because it happens over time. That also helps us understand, particularly that how they then recruit local businesses, local leadership in the community, other nonprofits, basically as snitches, and how do they kind of like just use other groups as well. So I was going to ask if because that's one of the work that needs to happen, if people are wanting to take part and kind of look at some of those documents, help craft a story. What more do we need? So that's why I kind of listed these things. There's also the DCFS, Child Protective Services fight, that is very much that we want to take to the next level as well. Yeah, so as far as like just task oriented thing, from the coalition's vantage point, these two are kind of like outstanding things that we need to build on. And I know that Joanna is really appreciate Joanna's support, because Joanna is going to be supporting the DCFS CPS, the Child Protective Services work as well, along with just working with Black women in Skid Row and Black mamas in Skid Row as well. So creating that space. So yeah. So I don't know, Joanna, if you want to just comment on that, and then we'll see if folks are interested similarly in picking up some work and supporting.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, I could probably tell folks where we're at right now with that, but just to get a brief background, this is, I think, my second meeting with this working group. But initially, in the first meeting that I attended, I was also very excited just to know more about the work that's happening in the community around LAPD, and how we address policing within our community, because it's work that I currently do here at Berkeley as a PhD student. But during the time, well, earlier this year, I received some funding to be able to create a space for women to be able to talk about these experiences regarding policing, and what that means and how that shows up in our everyday lives. So through this partnership with Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, and also with the work that we're doing with the other organization that we're working with, we are thinking about hosting a space, hopefully early next month, for women to come together and to talk about the effects of policing and surveillance, and how that shows up in different capacities right across gender. But this funding obviously would also be used for like food. And I also suggested that we could also give away free books that have also been very instrumental for me in understanding my positionality within South Central, because I'm also from South Central. I didn't mention that, but born and raised there. And I have my own experiences with police and how they have showed up in my life through direct interactions with police officers, but then also through being involved in experiences with social services and the kind of policing and surveillance that comes with as well. So we're thinking about hosting a space and making it accessible to all women in LA to come and learn more about the work that we're doing, the work that other organizations are doing around in LA, and just use it as a space to be in community with one another, and to hopefully see if there's also other people who would like to join this fight, and see what we can do to further address the things that we've already been talking about within this working group.
Thank you, Joanna.
And just want to uplift that, this is the group we're working with, Downtown Women's Action Coalition. DWAC is housed within LA Can, And this is something DWAC has done forever in Skid Row, is create spaces for women in Skid Row, like all femme identifying folks. And it's incredibly powerful. It's an incredibly powerful space generally, but I know we talk a lot in this space about how, when that DCFS report was launched, it was launched in Skid Row, and a lot of outreach was done to Skid Row community members. And I remember being out on the street telling folks about the report and the launching with Tasha, and just hearing about how it resonated with so many people, and everybody had a story with DCFS. And so that was one of the things DWAC did, was when they launched this report, they created a space led by, Skid Row women, talking about the content of this report. And that facilitated and nurtured an environment that led to other people kind of sharing, their experiences, which can be, horrifying in any context, but to do it in a room full of people, I think speaks to just how great of a space Monique and everybody cultivated. But two, just analyzing the content of the report, like, and the content of, like, what DCFS purports to do versus folks' lived experience. And that was incredibly powerful. And so, when Joanna, you kind of proposed this, I think all of us got excited about something like that happening again, because we recognize that that's something the community responds to. And so, yeah, just really excited for it.
And I just really want to add that I really appreciate, but I don't want, to engage in this work and to support and participate. It doesn't require any funding. So that just happens to be an additional layer where this opportunity that Joanna offered, and we're like, okay, well, we can definitely build that space as well. But this is just, we want folks here to take ownership to this work, and really kind of build that power on the ground. So.
We've got Rokaline with your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, when we're talking about the violence that police have against women, specifically like trans women of color, do we have the officer information? Like, are we able to kind of link and see, are these like repeat officers that keep doing the same thing? It could almost be tied into harassment. But we could look at that if we have that info. And then one other thing I was thinking of too, like, I know like we do a say her name like once a year of all the women who were killed by the trans women who were murdered. But it seems like there's so many of those that when you dig into the story, like the police were investigating it, but they were using their dead name and doing stuff like that. And so I wonder if there's any way we could tie that in too. Like, even when police do investigate the trauma, they intentionally misuse the name of the person. And if we could end up linking like certain officers to like being repeatedly doing that, if we could almost kind of tie it into like an anti-trans gang of cops, or something like that, if that might help draw more visibility to what's happening.
I think that's an incredible idea. I think that's so great. I think that's in line with our Watch the Watchers fight, right? Identify these harm doers. And yeah, especially in this intersection of, specifically targeting trans folk, because we know they do. And so I think that's great. And I think that's something we should definitely try to compile.
One thought comes to mind, Brooklyn, that's a great idea, that if we, it may not be a bad idea to maybe look back, or just from our own information or news, that if there is a particular area that, there is more violence than other spaces, just like as we think about, just police violence at South Central or East Side or Boyle Heights or Mar Vista or other places. And that could, then we can see, go back and get the records to see, like, okay, who was on the beat, like, so, and then you can either further narrow it down as well, so I think that could be a way, at least if not looking back, but moving forward. But even if we are able to muster up that information too, that'd be great. Just thinking out loud.
If I could add on to that, I mean, if we were to do something like that, where we are thinking about narrowing down different areas that we would want to look at, I would say I'm also very interested in looking at South Central, because I'm from there. But then I think when it comes to the gendered policing aspect of what comes with LAPD and those experiences. I think South Central is the perfect place to look at. We have a lot of violence that's happening against Black women and girls in that area that people have been talking about, and other communities have also been opening up about as well, that I think deserves a lot of attention. But then also we're thinking about sex work and the kind of experiences with that. I mean, South Central, I think a lot of people within that community also have experiences, whether they're engaging in sex work itself or people around the area as well. I think there's this specific kind of vulnerability that they're vulnerable to when it comes to police harassment and certain kinds of experiences across gender in certain areas in South Central that I think are worth looking into.
That's great
That's
news.
great. And I'm just
heard my own voice there. I'm just taking some notes here, just so we can follow up with this in a later date, but I think these are phenomenal ideas. Oh, okay.
One thing I can propose then is, thank you, Joanna. One thing I can propose that if there are people interested, maybe we should look at the records that we have from last year, identify that, see what initial analysis we have made. From there, what kind of story is emerging out of that? And looking at patterns and obviously other things. So, and then see what is missing in that we need to know, and do some more. If we need to file more records up until give us all records up until, August 31st of all the arrest records and various other things. So I think this is, yeah, there's definitely, a lot of power in that and weaving that story together. I mean, another, just real quickly, I wanted to throw in that we also talked to the Star Garden. They're organizing the strippers in Hollywood, the club out in Hollywood. So, and then the conversations kind of moved into other directions too. But there's definitely an opportunity to meet with a group of Black sex workers as well. And then to kind of just speak about and share, particularly about surveillance and even predictive policing, hotspots, and all of that. How does that affect street sex work? And then the online stalker state information gathering, how does that impact online sex work as well? So, I mean, these are the areas that kind of just maybe bring it together. So maybe, Matthias, if I can propose, in the interest of time, to see if folks are interested and who all is, and then, just can have time to support this work, and then maybe they can start looking at the documents and other things. And then if people have other ideas that they would like to share to build within this work as well. I just want to say that one of those things that I really appreciate about the coalition is that this is a space where just like, people come in and they have thoughts and ideas, just like Joanna first came in and shared with what she was thinking. We're like, okay, well, let's see. I mean, all we ask is as it is within the values and principles, that it's fiercely abolitionist. The work is not reformist. So, with that, how do we build power on the ground? How do we do popular education? How do we engage in political education? So anybody interested in helping with the sex workers information that we have and looking it up and moving it together? Okay. Awesome. All right. Matthias, taking no names.
I am. I see you there too, Rockeline and Jamie.
Salim, Laura.
Yeah, and Jamie, I don't know if I have your contact information, so if you could drop it in the chat, Rockeline, I believe I have yours, but I'll take it again, just in case I don't.
And then we have Joanna and Selim's.
Okay, yep. Great, thank you, Jan.
Or did Laura say it?
Yes, I believe they
Okay,
did.
cool. Okay, and then maybe we should, and then we can say what the process would look like. So maybe the next thing is that if, and I know that Joanna has already has volunteered to support the work in the GCFS, CPS fight, Child Protective Services. Anybody else who's interested in supporting that work?
I missed a little bit of like what that work would entail. Can you just give like a quick summary of?
Yeah, the quick snapshot. Go ahead, Matthias, please.
Well, I was just gonna say, yeah, well, this I can speak to kind of what we've been working on since the report's release and before kind of Joanna jumped in. And then Joanna, maybe you can say a little bit more about if we have any tangible next steps for that. But so we had this town hall, we released the report. A few of the things that came out of that that folks from DWAC named was one, having a regular reading circle for Skid Row community members of this report. And so we had one reading circle, and that's something we want to continue on. The other thing that folks from DWAC raised that might be good is some more short form content that comes from the report, right? So it could be like little videos, TikTok videos, short videos of people kind of uplifting one facet of the report or one experience from there. Another could be condensing one aspect into an infographic to go on social media. So it's really popular education development based on content from the report, and kind of creating and continuing the space of a reading circle for Skid Row community members to kind of come in and discuss this information.
Okay, Laura, thank you. Laura is down for the DCFS. And Salim, the long-term goal really is to build power on the ground and to go after the county. That's really just like, how do we go after the county to dismantle these toxic systems that all they do is weaponize the information and criminalize people? All right. Thank you. Cool. And Matios is a hell of a taskmaster. Oh my gosh. So be aware.
It's not true. I'm the nicest person. We do have, one section of overlap. If folks are interested, and it actually ties to our webinar for next week. And that's, within our War on Youth working group, we're dealing with a new youth surveillance program called PATH. And PATH and some of the other programs that have come out of it, or that have come alongside it in schools, actually do identify. And this is a youth surveillance program that has historically looked for targeted violence or terrorism among youth. And now that language around these programs has evolved from terrorism lingo to a more mental health oriented lingo, which is something we're seeing on a statewide level with SB 43 and care courts and everything else. But one of the things they identify as a risk factor name is gender identity issues. And so we're seeing this in line with attacks on gender expression across the country. And so that's a fight that's going to be ramping up real soon, the next upcoming weeks. And so if you have youth in your life, especially youth that attend LAUSD schools, we'd love for folks to plug in and get some of the resources we're about to be dropping we'll release a zine on another LAUSD anonymous reporting app called Lazar tomorrow. So look out for that. I think we're releasing it tomorrow. We'll release it in the next couple of days, if anything. But yeah, just something to flag with some overlap. Obviously, when we talk about an attack on families, that's an attack on youth. And when we talk about an attack on gender and sexuality, that's specified here too. So just uplifting that.
So I think the way it's been, and to be, in full disclosure, so Matthias and myself are the staff here at Coalition, besides Shakir. But the way our work goes, that we are here to staff the community. So, how do we support that, to coordinate, to organize, to get all the stuff together? So I think what we will do is, as a follow-up to folks, to have a meeting, like this is more like a monthly webinar community meeting, but to kind of just build up the working group on that. What it typically does is looks at the issues, then we identify, like, okay, what kind of work do we have to do about this? What kind of capacity do we have? Who else do we need to reach out to? So it's kind of a building blocks as well. And then also what the working group does is kind of like, okay, what are we going to do at our community meeting now, like today? So then they develop an agenda, and everybody's welcome to facilitate, reach out to people, like things like that, however we want to pursue that and push that. So that's just maybe a piece of when that working group can meet, what day of the week is folks are available, what time. So yeah, like the data driven working group, policing working group meets either the first Monday or the third Monday of the month, depending, but typically on the third Monday. And then the academic complicity group meets on the fourth Monday of the month. Then the fight against the war on youth working group meets on Thursdays.
First and third Thursday. Yep.
Okay. So, and then this group can also meet as well, and come up with some stuff together. So maybe once we send an email out, it would be great for folks to just share, like, what is their availability, what their capacity is, and what are some of the days, yeah, and times.
What's a good way to find out about like the projects that other working groups are working on?
Yeah, I mean, so the best way to kind of plug in would be to go to a working group meeting. And the best way to kind of get directed to a working group meeting is we do have a calendar on our website, but would be to come to whatever Tuesday meeting is associated with that. So for a good chunk of our other fights, they fall under data-driven policing. And so yeah, just plugging in with that meeting on the fourth Tuesday of the month could kind of give you a good sense of what other working groups are working on. There's academic complicity, there's social media surveillance, which is dropping a zine real soon. Yeah, there's a bunch. And okay, it looks like Tuesday mornings are available, or later on at night for some. Yeah, do folks have a great? Okay, yeah, it looks like folks are chiming in. Tuesdays we typically, so if folks have a day or time or day of the week recurring, that's pretty good for them, and maybe we can zero in on a time. If you could drop it in the chat. Tuesdays are a little difficult on the evenings just because we usually have another community meeting we're working on. But Thursdays can be possible. And this doesn't have to be every week. It could be some working groups meet once a month, like War on Youth meets first and third Thursday of every month, but not on a fourth or fifth if there's a fifth. Okay, great, Kevin. Thursday evenings are good for Laura too. Thursday's looking like it might be what it is. So, just a quick, and I know Jamie, you wanted to plug in too, and Jordan, so I'd love to see what y'all's availability is, but I wonder what about maybe Thursday the 14th as a time to kind of meet and flesh some of this out.
Yeah, Jamie's also available, they're saying, on Thursday.
Oh, great, great, great.
Thursday
All right.
must be a popular spot.
It's looking that way. So how about Thursday the 14th at 5, 6? Is 6 better for folks? Maybe give you some time. Maybe 6 o'clock Thursday, the 14th. All right, I'll send out a Google Calendar invite. And I think I got everybody's email, but Kevin's and
Oh, Kevin posted that.
oh, did
I think I sent it.
oh, I see it, I see it, I see it, I see it. All right, cool. All right, great. I think I got everybody.
So these meetings are always over Zoom, right?
Yes. Yeah, the working group meetings have 90% of the time they're over Zoom, with the exception of a couple working groups. But yes. And this monthly webinar is over Zoom, has exclusively been over Zoom for a while.
Okay. But which meetings then are in person?
So our monthly general meeting, which is the third Tuesday of the month, and our data-driven policing meeting, which is our fourth Tuesday of the month, are in person at LA Can. There's always a hybrid option.
Okay.
This is great. I'm really excited, y'all. Rockline, I'm really excited about your idea. Yeah, always really stoked about growing that fight back, you know.
Now, I was just wondering, Laura, you had some other suggestions too, and we can, if you want to, if you feel fine sharing it, or maybe we can next time.
I did.
I mean, something about a zine or something. I can't remember right now.
Well, it's kind of just what Matios was talking about,
Got it.
like the just pop culture short form and making it potentially making a zine out of the DCFS report, but I think DWAC might already be working on that. So maybe just linking with them and helping facilitate that.
That'll be great. That'll be great.
Cool. Any other questions or ideas from folks? If not, we can maybe get in some announcements. All right.
Well,
you
go
ahead.
to talk about Thursday's action if people are around?
I was chomping at the bit to talk about it. Yeah. Thursday we'll be out at City Hall with Unión del Barrio protesting the mayor alongside the residents of 27th and San Pedro, whose neighborhood got blown up by LAPD. And so yeah, we need folks there to show up, show out, make some noise. And you know what we're really uplifting here is, yes, the community members of 27th and San Pedro are still displaced, right? Their homes are still wrecked. But you know, they haven't been given any substantial resources to kind of fix their homes. In the meantime, LAPD has gotten a substantial raise, right? A substantial, significant raise, which just speaks to the mayor's priorities. And so we're fighting back against that. We're meeting on the Main Street side of City Hall at 3:30 p.m. and the action starts right at 4. Tell your folks, if you're affiliated with an organization let them know to show up.
Can we post a flyer?
Sure. Okay.
And Tuesday mornings at 9:30, we go to the police commission. Today there was no meeting because it was a long weekend, but we'll be back on the morning of the 12th. There was a big article in the LA Times yesterday as well. I mean, going after little babies now, so how they are criminalizing people in that space, how they are silencing people in that space, how they are trying to contain and control us. But fuck that. It's a very clear thing that how do we continue to expose them and just constantly expose them, and then disrupt this shit. And as much as we can, people get arrested, people are dragged out, people are just like, so if you have time, if you're available, we're there at about 9:25 or so. So my main entrance and the commission room is just behind there as well. So yeah, join us next Tuesday, September 12th.
I think that's it. So thanks so much, everybody, for coming through. If you have any questions, email us at stopLAPDspying@gmail.com. And yeah, hope to see you next week. Yeah, see you all on the 14th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.